When Nodirbek Abdusattorov was 8 years old, he was already winning world titles. When he was 17, he became world rapid champion and in that same tournament beat Magnus Carlsen. And now, after conquering Wijk, he's finally added a Tata Steel Masters title to his resume. This isn't just another tournament win, this is the story of a prodigy who actually lived up to the hype. Nodirbek Abdusattorov was born on September 18, 2004 in Uzbekistan, a country that has quietly become one of the biggest chess powerhouses of the modern era. But long before Olympic gold medals and elite super tournaments, Abdusattorov was already making noise. In 2012, at just 8 years old, he won the World Youth Championship under 8. That alone put you on the radar, but Nodirbek didn't stop there. By the age of 9, he had defeated 2 Grand Masters in a single tournament, something almost unheard of for a player that young. And in 2015, at just 11 years old, he became the youngest player ever to enter the FIDE Top 100 Juniors. The chess world had been warned. Abdusattorov's rise wasn't just fast, it was relentless. He earned his first GM norm at the 2016 Mikhail Chagorian Memorial, followed by another at the Abu Dhabi Masters in 2017. Later that same year, he secured his final norm and officially becoming a Grandmaster, and at the time he was the second youngest in history. To this day, he still sits comfortably inside the top 10 youngest Grandmasters ever. And what stood out wasn't his age, but his style. Calm, precise, fearless against high-rated opponents. By his mid-teens, Abdusattorov was already competing against elite professionals across formats. He played in the Pro Chess League, where one of his wins was voted Game of the Round. He qualified for the Speed Chess Championship. And in the 2021 FIDE World Cup, he knocked out Anish Giri, proving he could survive brutal knockout pressure even if his run ended 1 round later. But 2021 wasn't done with him just yet, because he had this game, the best game of his career, against Magnus Carlsen in the 2021 World Rapid Championship. Now, to note, prior to this game, he had defeated 3 giants in a row. He had already defeated Levan Aronian, Boris Gelfand, and Wojciech. I think I said that wrong. But this would prove to be his final exam with the most rigorous professor, Magnus Carlsen. He started with c4. We got knight f6, knight to c3, and e5. And this kind of transitions back to the reverse Sicilian, where black starts with e5. This is the most aggressive way to play. We've got knight f3, knight to c6, e4, and what we get is interesting. We get bishop e4, d3, d6, a3, bishop to c5, b4. Now it takes lots of space. I do not know why there is this problem with error classifying moves. Anyway, bishop to b6 is played. Carlsen is certainly following one of the games of his main rivals. Just a few days before this, what had happened was we had 7 bishop to d4. He had changed the move order. We had knight takes d4, pawn takes, knight takes d4, bishop to e3, and c5. And this is a game that he had with Fabiano Caruana playing Karyakin in that same tournament. And it went, along these lines with bishop e2, short castles, bishop e6, rook b1, b6, f4, e takes f4, bishop takes here, knight comes out. And this was kind of how the game went on. Magnus doesn't do that. He plays, obviously, bishop b6, we've aforementioned. Now knight to a4, and now bishop to g4. Black is trying to soften the d4 square as much as possible. Get the knight in there, because this knight eventually could, get there, and putting pressure on this knight so it can't cover this square. So what we get is knight takes b6, a takes b6, and bishop to b2. Now bishop takes f3, queen takes f3. So what white has got now is they've got the bishop pair. It does not count for much yet, but there's always a chance that white will be able to really use the pawns and then gain the advantage. But for the most part, we get knight to d7. This knight is also trying to get to d4 at some point. So what we get is g3, because you could play this now, but I would probably snap take. So we want this knight to also get control of this square. And it's going to have to maneuver a bit to do that. So we've got g3. White is going to fianchetto the bishop. We get queen to f6. Which is interesting because if you had played, for example, knight f8 first, then there's bishop to h3. And white can stop it before it happens. So you knight to e6, and then bishop takes e6. F takes, and now queen h5 check, and you get onto black immediately. So Magnus Carlsen has to do this the right way. So he starts with queen f6. Now, if you play queen d1, we get knight f8, and now still bishop to g2. This time, bishop h3 is not as convincing as before because black is doing fine with knight to e6 because there's queen takes e6. I mean, you could probably still play f takes e6. So now we get knight to e6, still gets played. Short castles from white, and now a bold move, g5 from Magnus Carlsen. Why? You have to stop this f2, f4. In that game, that variation we looked at earlier, that is what they used. That is what white used. So you're using everything you can to clamp down on the square. f4 is not possible. Magnus Carlsen stopping it at every opportunity. And now here we have a novelty. Played by Nodirbek, he plays a bishop to h3 in this position. This is a novelty. The previous kind of game was bishop to c3. This is the line that they had, and then there was h5, rook a2, king e7, a4, h4, bishop h3, knight cd4. So bishop h3 still gets played, but knight cd4 now. Bishop to g4, rook to h6, and this is how the game went in that variation. And we got to this kind of position. But obviously Nodirbek sees something different. Bishop h3, he may have been making this up on the fly as well. It is a rapid game. Still h5, played by black, but now you take the knight. He removes the knight from the board. We get queen takes e6, and what he does now is he plays b5. He goes for play on the queen side. Magnus Carlsen has to do this, by the way. He has to play h5. There's no time for him to hesitate. He can't, play this move. He can't. He has to keep going for it. So b5. The young Uzbekistan player at this point is trying to disrupt this knight and to disrupt black's major plans. Disrupt the coordination of his opponent's camp before the big break that they get on the side of the board. The problem is that this pushes the knight probably to where it wants to go. It's going to help the knight get to it one to go. What you could consider here is the immediate f4. It's an interesting move. Because after g takes f4, you've got g takes f4, and now rook g8 check, getting out the way, king h1, long castles, and now you can play f5. And this could have been something. But he goes for b5. And now Magnus Carlsen plays the best move, knight b8. The best reaction. Castling is obstructed, queenside, just for the moment. But the knight can get itself to c5. And that will be a very key square for that. So we get f4 now. G takes f4, G takes f4. But now I get knight d7 in the way. Now when you play king h1. Okay, it's just a compliment. Have to remind me about that. Now when you play king h1, black looks a lot better in this position. So we get queen g4. Offering a queen trade, we play queen f3. I would like to trade on my terms, but I'll just play f6. Now queen e3, now long castles, and now white's in an interesting position. We go for f5. He goes for f5, and we're getting something interesting here. This shouldn't make Nodirbek happy, but he's gonna play this position. I don't know why he keeps telling me that it's my move in a game. Anyway. So we get rook takes g6, and now you've got a choice to make. Do you play pawn takes g6, or do you play f takes g6? F takes g6 is interesting, but it's probably not correct, because now the pawn is in danger. You have to try and defend it somehow, but you can't really. So now you're forced to play g7. The queen will just drop back to h7, and now you can play queen h3, and this is the only move that gives you anything, because you're threatening to take this. So for example, when rook takes g7, rook takes g7, queen takes g7, there is queen takes h4. And while you did lose that pawn, you've still gained one back. And you're still going to try and get to this king. Your dark squared bishop is kind of blocked out a bit, but you can try and weaken this a little bit. They're all on dark squares, so maybe your bishop can get in. Your king is relatively safe. This knight is yet to get into the game, but once it does, it will put pressure. So you have to defeat Magnus Carlsen in an endgame. Knight to c5, and now bishop to c1. Interesting move, because you are firmly giving this up. But you can't play it, because queen h3 check. So there are tactics in the position. You can't rush, you can't rush. So knight to c5, bishop to c1. We get c6 first. c6 played by Magnus. You know, queen h3 is always a problem. So we get pawn takes, and now queen h3 check all the same. King slides over to b7, and now I can play queen f3. Your queen is still yet to infiltrate, although you are Magnus Carlsen. This game is not easy. And next, both players skillfully maneuver their kings in order to improve them to the maximum. So what we get, queen h7. Now we get bishop d2. Now king a6. Now king g2, queen g7 check, and king f1. Queen h7, and now h3. Now d5, breaking in the center. Queen f5. Looking to trade queens. Queen g8. Don't want to trade queens just yet. But now pawn takes, pawn takes. And now we take again. Now queen takes. And now king e2. And we've reached this position. Solid. There were, some tricks involved, but both players have improved their position to the maximum. King b5 continues the king march. But now bishop e3, the best move. Queen comes in with a check, but I can play bishop f2. This is the maximum that Magnus can get from the position. This is the maximum he can extract. h4 is played by Nodirbek. Nothing wrong with that after king to a4. e4 is now played, trying to bust in. And now e4 is interesting because you could have also played queen d5. Queen d5 would have been an interesting move, trying to maybe go this way and pick this up and help this promote. It could have been an interesting move because you do allow some interesting stuff. But e4 is played. Now d takes e4, knight takes e4, threatening the bishop. But queen f3, perfectly fine. And now queen g6, the best move. Once again, the threat of a queen trade is offered. We don't get it. h5. And now queen e8. Threatening a discovery, a nasty ambush in the time scramble that they're currently under. But bishop e3 blocks everything. f5, though, is a miss for Magnus Carlsen. A miss by the world champion. The best move in this position for him to continue on with the pressure is queen takes h5. Queen takes h5 would have won the dangerous pawn, and this probably would have led to a draw because the idea is when you take the queen, there is this fork. In time pressure, you don't always see these. So, f5, a miss by Magnus. He misses it. Now h6, now it doesn't exist. You can still try and trade queens, but this would be a losing endgame because you would not be able to get back and stop the pawn. So, queen e5 now. Now king f1. Now queen d5. Now king g2, queen g8. And now king h3. And this is a draw, 100%, but it's not easy. And the knight g5 is what's played in the game, but another interesting move could have been queen g6. Queen g6, because you keep eyes on this. You don't let it participate, but you're always threatening coming down here as well. This might have been a bit more in the spirit of the position. Knight g5 check is just wrong, because I take, and you get into this endgame. Should be a draw, but it's not so simple, because there's queen to c6 check, king takes h3, and now check. And now Nodirbek may be happy with a draw, but he's going to push Magnus. Queen c3, king a4, queen g7 back. He gave up the pawn, but it's like, what are you going to do about it? Your queen, where's it going? Because I'm going to push and promote. So you've got a little choice. You've got to play here, queen f4, and you've got to go for perpetual on this king. Queen e3 check. Correct, but maybe slightly wrong. King h4, f4 is now played. This pawn would only obstruct the checks, though. Has Magnus... if Magnus had more time, maybe he would have chosen something different. But there's queen d7 now, check, b5, h7, queen e5, and that pawn is just about to promote, because there's queen d8 check, queen e1, sorry, it's queen d8, queen e1, not as precise. What the hell? Sorry. King g4 is what's played in the game after queen e5. Now here, there are a couple of moves. What he could have also played is queen d1. Brilliancy. And the idea would have been to lure the king onto a bad square. So, for example, king a3. There is queen d8. And now you can promote. And if, for example, queen e1 check, there's king g5. And, for example, if there's queen e5 check, there's king g6. And now queen e4. And king g7. And now queen g2. And then there's king f7. And you run out of checks and white is winning. Instead, after king g4 and all the head-spinning complications, there's f3. And this is going to be good enough to get the draw. King takes f3, queen f6 check, king e4, queen h4, king d5, queen h5, king c6, queen g6 check, and it surely is winning. Maybe. Queen g3 check, king b7, queen f3. Are you going to be able to escape the check? Hang on a minute. Now you got to be really careful. Queen f6 check. King a7. You're running out of checks. Queen f2. Now king b7. Surely this is a draw. No. Nodirbek manages to block. So no perpetual. And now queen f7. Check. Looks like it picks up the pawn. But there's queen c7. Now queen f3 check. Is this still just a draw? King a6. Going for the same thing. And now there's queen a8 check, which is beautiful because what it avoids is if you had went queen f6 check, there's queen b6 and you're bust because there's no more checks. And then I can also probably take this at some point, or I can promote because you won't be able to stop both. So king b6, very important. Queen h8, now queen c2 check, king a3, queen d3 check, king a2, king c5. Now important because I'm still protecting this and we're going for your king. Queen e4 objectively might have been stronger, but you know, it's not easy. b4 is played and the world champion has blundered. Queen d2 check, king a1 and queen d4 check, and it was all over because you fork the king and the queen and you win. Absolutely incredible by Nodirbek Abdusattorov. And his 2021 tournament was absolutely crazy. So December 2021, he was the tournament that changed everything. At just 17 years old, Nodirbek Abdusattorov went on an unbelievable run at the FIDE World Championship. He defeated Levan Aronian, Boris Gelfand, Magnus Carlsen, and then he beat Jan Nepomniachtchi in tie breaks to become the World Rapid Champion. 17 years old, World Champion against the very best players on the planet. That moment alone cemented him more as a prodigy. He was a future superstar. In 2022, Abdusattorov led Uzbekistan on board 1 at the FIDE Chess Olympiad against powerhouse teams like the United States and India. He saved crucial matches. Uzbekistan went on to win gold, with Abdusattorov scoring 8.5 out of 11. And before turning 18, he was already a world champion, an Olympic gold medalist, and soon after a 2700 rated super grandmaster. From there on, the results kept coming. 2023 Chess Cup, he won. He qualified for the Champions Chess Tour finals and reached the semi-finals there. In March 2024, he dominated at the Prague Masters, winning the tournament with a round to Spain, climbing all the way up to number 4 in the live rankings. At this point, Abdusattorov wasn't chasing the elite anymore, he was elite. And now finally, by winning the Tata Steel Masters, often called the Wimbledon of chess, Nodirbek Abdusattorov completes another chapter in his rise. So many legends, Carlsen, Anand, Kasparov, used Wijk as a proving ground. For Abdusattorov, this wasn't a breakthrough, it was confirmation. At just 21 years old, Nodirbek Abdusattorov has already achieved what most players only dream of. World titles, Olympic gold, elite tournament victories. And somehow it just feels like he's getting started. So the real question is not how good Abdusattorov really is, it is how much more is he going to win?